Thank you so much for joining Bruce Kirby, Rudy Ross, and me. We're studying the book of Genesis, and we're in chapter 11. We're going to look at the descendants of Shem, and that starts in verse 10, but we're going to skip through all the way to verse 24, just to not try to read a bunch of names that I can't pronounce. So in verse 24, Nahor lived 29 years, and he became the father of Terah. And Nahor lived after the birth of Terah 119 years and had other sons and daughters. If you'll remember back after the flood, the Lord said he was going to limit lifespan to 120 years. And I researched the other day on the internet who's the oldest person, and there's a nun in South America who has lived to be, I think it's either 115 or 116.
Oh, wow.
So when you live your life according to God's will, you can have a long life and not an untimely death. And just throw that in. All right, so when Terah had lived 70 years, he became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the descendants of Terah. Terah was the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran was the father of Lot. Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his birth, Ur of the Chaldeans. Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. She was the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Ishkah, and Sarai was barren and had no child. Let's pause at this point, and my apologies to any names that I have mispronounced. What did you all get out of that?
Well, for me, I see how Asia and the Middle East are populated, because you can kind of see the direction of Shem's family. And they end up being the people that become modern-day Iran and Afghanistan and Syria, the countries. When they came upon this plain in Shinar, it's the Fertile Crescent. So it was always helpful to me to see how Japheth moved to the west, Shem moved to the east, and Ham moved to the south and to the west.
Cool.
And so these become the nations that are important in the biblical context.
Yeah. One of the things that jumped out at me, and I got this from Victor Hamilton's commentary on Genesis, helped me think about this, is that everybody needs a conversion experience. So I didn't become a preacher from birth. God may have called me at my birth, but I had to have a conversion experience, which happened in my later teenage years. Bruce, you've had one. Rudy, you've had one at different times of our life. Abram needed a conversion experience. So the world that he lived in was probably one that worshiped the moon. And Haran, the name Haran, implies someone who is connected to worshiping the moon, and Sarai is the princess of the moon. And so he lived, if Dr. Hamilton is correct, he lived in an environment of moon worship, and yet that didn't prevent God from calling him and revealing himself to him to know who he is. Yeah. What do you think about that, Rudy?
Well, when you that's a fact that I actually never heard before, but when you look at the Islamic flag and see the crescent moon in it, these Shem ultimately is where Islam is today, and it was where it really got started. So, but Ham is basically where the Egyptian mythology gets started, and and then Japheth becomes the mythology of the Roman gods
Yeah.
and the Greek gods. So all three of them had a truth that got a miscue because of humanity's take on it.
Yeah.
And Bruce, when you say that, to be able to think about it more than one time is a good idea, because what ends up happening is you end up with a kernel of the truth with a rock on the side that keeps it unlevel, and as you build on that without fixing it to being on the cornerstone, it always arises with a mistake in it. So
Bruce, go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
That's good.
Before I keep reading, do you want to have a comment on these?
No,
verses?
go ahead and read it.
Let me finish this chapter up. So Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and daughter-in-law Sarai, and his son Abram's wife, and they went out together to Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died. So they intended to go to Canaan. They didn't make it. They stayed in Haran. Give us a comment on that. Anything that just chimes in for you?
Well, I'm trying to think of why the promised land, as it were, was named Canaan, and also that Canaan was the grandson of Noah, and is there a connection between the fact that the person of Canaan was blameless in the Noah story, really, and yet the place where the Jewish people were supposed to go and live and worship God was also named Canaan. So I don't know if there's a connection there or not, and I don't want to just reach with my imagination for it, but there are no mistakes in these writings, and there are tremendous amount of depth in everything that is written and everything that God said. So I'm thinking that there is some connection, and I don't want to overthink it, but there's something there.
Yeah, I don't have a clue. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that basically when we talk about the spirit of Cain surviving the flood in Canaan, and I wonder if Ham naming his son Cain, or Canaan, had an attitude of he was like Cain. The thing is that Adam was alive to see Lamech born. Now this is before the flood. So the experience of what happened in being taken out of the garden was known to everybody in person except for Noah. So the story survives, and so knowing the attitude of Cain would have survived too, because really it doesn't appear that anybody from the Canaan descendancy made it to the flood, except we don't know who the three sons, we don't know who Noah's wife is.
Yeah. So
there's a lot of question marks.
Let me make one real quick comment, and then I'm going to have to ask you to pray. We've not talked much about Sarai. She is barren. She is to be the mother of God's promise being fulfilled, and yet she's barren. Let's keep that in mind, and we'll get to that later videos. Bruce, why don't you pray for us?
Lord, help us understand these scriptures as they are meant to be understood, mm-hmm. and I tend to have an imagination that constructs a story around things I don't understand, and help me to stay grounded in what's obvious and what is helpful and what is meant for me to understand. Amen.
Amen. I agree with that prayer. Hey, thank you all for joining us today. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.